They called me a thief. Right there, in front of the whole neighborhood. The HOA president pointed at me like I was some kind of criminal and accused me of stealing water. She had slides, charts, even fake engineering diagrams convincing enough that 50 of my neighbors stared at me like I'd been robbing them blind for years. 3 days later, that same president was screaming as the FBI walked her out of court in handcuffs. Act 1. The Spark of Conflict. My name's Adam Wright. I'm 36 years old, a financial advisor by trade, and up until this nightmare started, I thought I'd made one of the smartest decisions of my life. I bought a property outside the boundaries of the Meadowbrook HOA. No dues, no paint color inspections, no one measuring the height of my fence. Just peace, privacy, and a well that pumped fresh water straight from the ground. That morning started like any other. I was on my deck, drinking coffee and watching the sunlight catch the creek that separates my land from theirs, when a process server walked up the driveway. He looked almost embarrassed as he handed me the papers. Sorry, man, just doing my job. I flipped open the packet, expecting maybe some property tax notice, but instead I found the most absurd accusation I'd ever seen. Meadowbrook HOA, under President Paige Whitman, was suing me for $18,000 in stolen utilities. They claimed I'd secretly tapped into their water system for the past 5 years, somehow tunneling pipes through bedrock and across a creek without anyone noticing. I actually laughed out loud, like, who do they think I am? Tony Stark with a secret underground lab. But the further I read, the less funny it got. Their diagrams looked official, stamped, detailed. The usage reports lined up eerily with my actual well data: seasonal irrigation, winter heating, everything. Someone had been monitoring me. Or worse, forging official records. The lawsuit didn't just demand money, it demanded inspection access. In other words, they wanted the right to dig up my yard, my garden, my fruit trees, the landscaping I'd spent 3 years perfecting, looking for pipes that didn't exist. That's when the pit in my stomach formed. This wasn't about water, it was about control. Act 2. Escalation and the breaking point. The HOA meeting that night was packed. 50 people crammed into a room meant for 30. Folding chairs lined the walls. People live-streamed on their phones. The air buzzing like a courtroom before a public execution. Then Paige walked in. 53. Perfectly styled blonde hair. A navy power suit. Heels clicking against the floor like a judge's gavel. She had a projector, handouts, even a laser pointer. This wasn't a meeting, it was a stage play. She laid out proof of my theft, water consumption charts, projected costs, and a story about how a sophisticated neighbor had been draining their system for years. That neighbor was me. Neighbors I'd waved to at the grocery store nodded along. Someone muttered, "Figures. He lives just outside the HOA." Another said, "Maybe I was stealing packages too." I stood up stupidly to defend myself. "I have my own well. It's right there on my property. I don't use your system." Paige was ready. She flipped to another slide. Decoy wells, a common tactic to disguise illegal connections. She made me sound like some kind of criminal mastermind. By the time I left, people wouldn't even meet my eyes. The label had stuck. Thief. And then Lucas Green, the HOA manager, found me in the parking lot. Nervous energy. Fake sympathy. "Look, Adam, maybe we can work something out. 2,000 now, a payment plan for the rest. No one has to know." That's when it clicked. If they had proofs, they wouldn't be bargaining. They wanted me to fold under the pressure, to pay up just to make it stop. But I'll admit, walking to my car, listening to whispers and watching phones recording me, I felt the first wave of real doubt. What if they'd planted evidence? What if a judge actually believed them? I sat in my driveway that night, staring at my well pump, wondering if fighting back was even worth it. For the first time in years, I thought about giving up. Maybe paying would be easier. Maybe I really couldn't win against an HOA with money, lawyers, and a whole neighborhood behind them. The next morning, I forced myself to the county utilities office, and that's where everything changed. The clerk, Sarah Mitchell, pulled up official maps. My property had never, not once, been connected to Meadowbrook's system. Then she frowned. 3 weeks earlier, someone had uploaded a revised map showing a connection and the name on the authorization. Lucas Green. She called her supervisor, who told me straight, falsifying county utility maps isn't just fraud. It's a federal crime. Homeland Security, FB territory. I walked out, shaking, clutching copies of both the original and the forged maps. I had proofs. But before I even made it home, my phone buzzed. A photo of me entering the county building, time-stamped. A text, stop digging or face the consequences. That night, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside were telephoto pictures of Lucas and 2 men in utility coveralls burying PVC pipe behind Maple Drive, the exact spot Page's diagrams claimed my illegal connection was. They weren't uncovering evidence. They were planting it. I drove out there myself, borrowed a metal detector, started digging. Sure enough, the pipes were capped. Disconnected stage props for a show-and-tell inspection. My phone rang. Page's voice, sharp, threatening. You're trespassing on public utilities. Adam, that's another felony. I could hear Lucas whispering behind her. Then headlights. A truck pulled up. 3 guys jumped out in utility service uniforms, badges, clipboards, the whole act. But when I called Sarah at the utilities office, she checked the database. No such company existed. They weren't workers. They were imposters. I snapped photos of their plates as they scrambled back into the truck and peeled away. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a vendetta. It was an operation. They'd pulled this scam before, and if I didn't stop them, they'd do it again. Act 3. The showdown. 3 days later, we were in federal court. The courthouse looked like a fortress, marble columns and metal detectors. And I walked in alone with my manila folder of evidence. Page marched in with a legal entourage. 3 lawyers in $1,000 suits. Lucas pushing a cart stacked with binders and projectors. Their opening statement painted me as a sophisticated fraudster, a parasite draining the community dry. Their diagrams flashed on the screen. The story polished and perfect. For a second, even I wondered if the judge might believe them. Then it was my turn. My hands shook as I spread out documents. Original county maps, timestamps, the forged revision with Lucas's name, photos of the staged PVC pipes, recordings of Page's threats. And then came the twist. A county utilities officer, Mark Thompson, stepped forward. He'd risked his career to testify that Lucas had tried to bribe him for database access. When Mark refused, the threats started. Phone calls, cars parked outside his kid's school. He'd kept emails, notes, everything. The courtroom shifted. For the first time, Page's lawyers looked nervous. Under questioning, Lucas cracked. He stumbled over technical details, contradicted himself, sweated through his shirt. And then Page lost it completely. She leapt up, voice rising, finger jabbing in my direction. People like him drag our neighborhood down. We have to protect our community from freeloaders. The room went silent. She'd just admitted it wasn't about water at all. It was about power, about control, about pushing out anyone who didn't bend to her HOA rules. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Wright doesn't even live in your neighborhood. He isn't under your authority. That was it. The case collapsed. My evidence, Mark's testimony, Page's own outburst, it all added up to a conspiracy, forgery, fraud, impersonating government officials. The gavel came down, case dismissed, and then came the sound I'll never forget. Handcuffs clicking shut as federal agents stepped in. Page Whitman, the almighty HOA president, led away screaming, Lucas trailing behind, pale as paper. I walked out of that courthouse exhausted, drained, but free. Oh, final line. In the end, I learned something simple. The truth doesn't defend itself. You have to stand up and fight for it.